Yeah. So the next talk is Vafa Khalighi, which is our point person for bidirectional, all things bidirectional in TAG for a long time. And he'll be talking about typesetting mathematics in Persian. Looking forward to it. Have the floor.
Thank you so much. So I messed up sharing my screen yesterday. I'm really sorry, but I'm hoping that you can see my screen now before actually starting anything.
Yeah. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk about typesetting mathematics in Persian. So this is what I will talk about. I first dedicate this talk, then I will motivate the talk and give some introduction. Then obviously I need some acknowledgement, thanking other people. Then I will talk about the vertical spacing in display math in right-left documents. Then we go to numbers, decimal separator, and person signs in math mode. Then we talk about decimal separator and how the decimal separator needs to be smart, so we don't want decimal separator everywhere. Then we talk about math-rm, math-bf, math-it, and other similar macros and how they should behave with respect to numbers and decimal separators. Then I will talk about different forms of numbers, decimal separator, and person signs in inline and display math mode. By different forms, I mean switching between Latin and Persian. So we can do this actually outside the math mode. We can switch to Persian or Latin outside. What happens is that we also sometimes need to switch between Persian and Latin forms inside math mode. So how can we do this mid-math mode? And then at the end, I give you some conclusion about typesetting mathematics in Persian. So I want to dedicate this talk to Richard Foote and David Dummett of University of Vermont. So there are really a lot of mathematics textbooks in algebra. Obviously, one of the celebrated ones is the one by Michael Artin, which is now, it's in, I think, Pearson Classic version. The other one is Topics in Algebra and many other textbooks. So I decided to order this particular textbook back in 2020 when the pandemic started. But I got told by Wiley that I wouldn't be getting the textbook for 3 months. So then I emailed Richard, one of the authors of the textbook, and I asked him if there was a PDF version of the book that I could that I could buy, because obviously I didn't want to wait for 3 months until I could get the textbook. Then Richard emailed me, and he kindly offered that he would send me one of his copies that he had at home. And no matter how much I insisted that I wanted to pay for it, he didn't accept. So he actually sent his copy of the textbook. He also paid for the postage without accepting any money from me. And I also asked him if he could sign the book for me. So what happened is that he actually signed the book for me. Then he went to David's house and he also signed the book for me. So this is what you can see here. And as you can see, this was back in May 2020. Okay, so I just want to say a few words about mathematical writing. I want to start by the quote from my favorite mathematician, Jean-Pierre Serre. What he says is that It says, strikes me that mathematical writing is similar to using a language. To be understood, you have to follow some grammatical rules. However, in our case, nobody has taken the trouble of writing down the grammar. We get it as a baby does from parents by imitation of others. Some mathematicians have a good ear, some not, and some prefer the slangy expressions such as if and only if. That's life. I included this because I think this pretty much summarizes of what I'm going to say. So anything that I'm going to state in this talk is primarily my own experience typesetting mathematics and also seeing how other people do it. So I just don't want to claim that anything I'm about to say it's a universal practice. Obviously, different people have different tastes and they may do things quite differently. So being interested in algebraic geometry, it means that I need to learn a lot of mathematics from different areas. I particularly want to thank the American Mathematical Society, French Mathematical Society, Springer, Cambridge University Press, and other publishers actually publish mathematics textbook. What I like about the American Mathematical Society is that they have like 3 series of math textbooks that I'm interested. One of them is AMS Text, which they publish pure and applied mathematics textbook. The other one is GSM, Graduate Studies in Mathematics, and the other one is STML, a Student Mathematical Library, the kind of textbooks that is more about making undergraduate students interested in research. So there are also some mathematics textbook authors that I like to thank. I enjoyed reading their textbooks a lot. So there are a lot of mathematicians. I cannot possibly name all of them, but I just want to name a few people that I'm familiar with. Serge Lang, Theodore Schifrin, Joseph Silverman, Michael Spivak, Jean-Pierre Serre, and Claire Voisin. So this is actually my personal mathematical library at home. So let's first talk about the vertical spacing in display math mode with equation numbers. So this is what you can see. You can actually read for yourself. I'm not going to read this, but this is taken from the textbook on page 187. It's actually one of the dangerous bend signs. So what this has to do with Persian and right-to-left typesetting is that the Lecno produces more vertical spacing when you are typesetting from left to right. And with ECNO, you can save some space. But given that in Persian, we are actually writing from right to left, we need to, we are expecting that ECNO and LECNO should behave reversely to what they actually are in left to right text. So one of the examples that I prepared is this one. So if we typeset this, we have a display math equation with the equation on the right-hand side. So this needs to produce exactly the same vertical spacing if I use the Lecno option for right-to-left documents. And that's exactly the same. It produces the same vertical spacing. And once you make this Lecno, but without using the WD package for left-to-right documents, you see that it produces the vertical spacing before displayed equation is actually larger. So then this should be exactly the same thing in right-to-left documents. So this is what I meant by that we need to reverse ECNO and LECNO in right-to-left text. Okay, so what is the basic requirements for typesetting mathematics in Persian? Basically, mathematics is Persian is mainly typeset left to right, like English or other Western languages. So there are a few requirements. One of the basic requirements is that so for your input, the Unicode character U plus 0030 is actually the Latin digit 0, and so U plus 0039 is the Latin digit 9, and U plus 06F0 is just the Persian digit 0, and U plus 06F9 is Persian digit 9. So what we really need to do is that for the Latin digits 0 to 9, we need to convert them in the output to the equivalent Persian ones. And then U plus 0025 is the percent sign. So we also need to convert that to the Arabic or Persian percent sign. And then we have period or just the dot, which is U plus 002E. We need to convert that to the Persian or Arabic decimal separator, which in Unicode, it's U plus 066B. Okay, so what about the decimal separator? So we need to use, as I said on the previous slide, we need to use the Persian or Arabic decimal separator, which is U plus 066B as the decimal separator. But we certainly don't want to convert every time we see a period to the Persian decimal separator, because some of these periods might really be a punctuation, not really a decimal separator. For example, if you consider this display math, where we are adding 1.2 plus 2.8 equal to 4, obviously this one, the first dot and the second dot are decimal separator. So obviously we need to convert them to decimal separator, but the one at the end is just a punctuation mark. So we don't want to convert the last one to decimal separator. It's just a punctuation mark. On the other hand, when typesetting repeating decimals, we need to convert the period to Persian decimals, despite the fact that after the dot, we might have overline or dots. So as an example, consider that in display math, we need to typeset something like x equal to 3.14, and by this I mean that this is really 3.14141414, so it keeps repeating, and the other one is 2.71, and this is really 2.77777, repeating 7, but then 1 at the end, and there's obviously period at the end. So with this one, we really want this dot and this dot to act as a decimal separator, but the last dot to be just a period. In Persian, really, mostly they use overline for repeating decimals. Even if one of the digits is repeating, I just added the dot as an alternative notation. So what we really need, we need a clever way of converting period to Persian decimal separator to taking care of all these cases. Okay, so what's going to be happening with MathRM and friends? So when we change the font used for MathRM, MathBF, MathIT, MathSF, and MathTT, the fonts of both alphabets and numbers will be changed to the font that we choose. For example, if you consider this inline math, where I'm using the math BF and I'm actually putting both numbers and alphabets inside the argument of these control sequences, when you change the font for math BF, both the font for the digits and the alphabets will be changed, but this is not what we want in Persian. So what we really want to change only the fonts of these digits to Persian, but not the font for the X, Y, Z. So we want this to be the Latin computer mother fonts or Latin mother fonts. So I've talked about few requirements so far, so I want to really say how they are satisfied. So the main package that is used widely in Iranian academia for typesetting mathematics is the XePersian package, and this package provides 3 control sequences. They are set math digit font, set math SF digit font, and set math TT digit font, which takes care of all the requirements I have talking about so far. So the syntax is quite similar to what you see in other font spec kind of control sequences. So you have options, then you have the font's name, and then you have options. So you can either put your options in the first one or in the last one, or you can put half of your options in the first one and the other half in the second one. It doesn't matter, you can do any of those. With the set math digit font, we actually set the main fonts for the numbers, the decimal separator and person signs for math BF, math RM, math IT, and the normal display and inline math mode. With set math SF digit font, that's actually changing the font for math SF, and set math TT digit font is changing the math for math TT control sequence. So what's going to happen is that sometimes we need to have different forms of numbers, decimal separators, and person signs in inline and display math modes. So people have different tastes, and they may want to have different forms. So for instance, a request that comes a lot is that people want to have Persian forms of numbers in inline math mode, but actually Latin forms of numbers, decimal separator, and person signs in display math mode. So you could be asking that this could be any combination of them. So the good news is that the XePersian package actually provides 3 options, which you can actually change the forms of both inline and display math mode globally. So there are math digits and inline math digits and display math digits, where each of these accept actually 3 values: automatic, default, and Persian. So the value default, it means that it will be always latiform. The value Persian, it means that it will always be Persian, and the value automatic, it means that in right to left text it will be Persian, and in left to right text it would be default. So let me show you how that works. So the example I was talking about was this one, where okay, so I think okay, so let me first talk about this one. So I told you that one of the requirements was that we want to typeset this kind of thing, but inside MathBF we only want to change the font of the digits, but not the font of the alphabet. So let me first show this to you. So what's going to happen with the package XePersian, and when we choose the fonts for typesetting numbers, decimal separator, and person signs with the control sequence set math digit font. So as you can see, the decimal separator, so 1.2 becomes this, and then 2.8 becomes that. And for the math BF part, we get that we only have Persian numbers, but the alphabet, the bold X, Y, Z, is actually used in Latin mother fonts, not the Persian fonts that we chose. And obviously the last period here is also a period, not a decimal separator. So this is what I meant by smart decimal separator. So demonstrating the other ones, the options that I talked about. So if you can see, we have both an inline math mode here and display math mode here. So I want to change this globally. I want to have Persian inline math. So this is what the option does. So inline math digits equal to Persian. This makes the inline math Persian, and the display math digits default makes the display math to be using the Latin form. So for the inline math, we have Persian, and for the display math, we have the Latin form. Obviously, if you wanted to change this, it's quite easy. So instead of Persian, if you wanted to say, you could say default and then make the display to be Persian. And then you see that the inline becomes Latin, but the display becomes Persian. Okay, so in addition to have some options which we can change things globally for the entire document, we also have access to the following corresponding control sequences. So for inline math digits, we really want to have 3 of them. So we want to have auto math, we want to have default math, and we need to have Persian math. So there are 3 of them, and we actually have 2 modes. So there is inline math and display math. So there are in total 6 control sequences. Let me also show you the next example that I have here. So in the first example, I want to have the inline math to be Persian and the display math to be in Latin form. But in the second example, I want to have the default inline math digits, but for the display math, I want to have Persian numbers and decimal separators. So this is what's going to happen. For the first one, we have Persian inline, Latin display math modes, Latin inline, and Persian display math mode. Okay, so far so good. So I previously showed you that if we wanted to switch between Persian and Latin forms, we actually needed to do this before before entering the math modes. So we had to switch before inline or display math mode. But another request that comes a lot is that people need to be changing between Latin and Persian forms mid math mode. For instance, you need to be able to change to have some parts of a particular math formula in Persian form, but the other part in Latin form. So if you consider the inline math mode that I have here in this math formula, the left-hand side of the equal sign is just mu of 0, and this is actually a parameter. So what people want to do is that they want, for the parameter, they want to typeset this in Latin form, but after the equal sign, they want everything to be in Persian forms. So we really need to be able to switch between Latin and Persian forms mid-math mode, not just outside math mode. So how do we satisfy the last requirement? Again, the XePersian package provides two control sequences for this purpose. The first one is switch to default math digits, which actually switches to the Latin form. And the next one is switch to Persian math digits, which switches to the Persian math digits. Also note that if you want to restrict the scope of these two control sequences inside math mode, maybe you don't want to use begin group and end group or this form of grouping, because according to TUG rules, this actually will create a sub-formula. So maybe that's not what you want to do. So I've given a reference here if you want to see why you don't want to do that. That's actually page 129 of the textbook. So let me show you an example of this. So the example that I had was this one. And so we are again using the control sequence set math digit font for choosing the phones. So I have the inline math formula that I showed previously, but on the left-hand side of the equal sign, for the 0, we want to have 0 in Latin form, but everything else should be in Persian form. So that's why I have switched to default math digits at the beginning of the display math mode, and then after equal sign, I have switched to Persian math digits. So as you can see, the 0 is actually typeset in Latin form, but everything after the equal sign is in Persian form. Okay, so this makes us to the end of the presentation, and I can conclude this by stating that we have seen that typesetting mathematics in Persian is straightforward yet sophisticated due to various requirements. In particular, as I told in the beginning, mathematics is in Persian, it typeset left to right, just like in English and other Western languages, except that the text and some operator names may be in Persian. The decimal separator needs to be smart and take care of all the use cases. So we want the period at the end of a math mode to really be just a period as a punctuation, not a decimal separator. And with regard to repeating decimals, whenever after a period we have the control sequence overline or dot, we want the period to be converted to a Persian decimal separator in the output. And there are obviously various requirements for typesetting numbers, decimal separator, and person signs in inline and display math modes. So that finishes my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. I can answer any questions you might have.
Thanks very much, Vafa.
My pleasure.
Can I ask the first question? I think that's one of the privileges of being the chair of the session. I know that in Arabic, some countries or some regions of the world write the mathematics left to right and the mathematics right to left within the text, left to right and right to left, sorry. That does not occur in Persian at all.
No, not at all. Yeah, I'm aware that like in some Arabic language, they actually write mathematics from right to left, but in Persian, from the very beginning, it was written from left to right. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Is it,
Maybe, yeah, maybe I should have shown you some publications, maybe from maybe, I don't know, 80, 100 years ago, but before actually using tech. So
mhm,
people were using mathematics, typesetting mathematics left to right.
mhm,
So what really is, what really we need is just the things about the decimal separator and Persian numbers in math mode, but otherwise everything else is the same as in English and other Western languages. But sometimes they use like operator names in Persian. So I don't know, maybe for limit, when you have the control sequence LIM, they maybe use like Persian letters for limit, but otherwise it's the same thing as in English.
okay, cool. That was my doubt about this whole. The fact that if you write mathematics in the invert order of the text, does it have to do with the French involved with colonization or anything like that, or is it just pure
Well,
regional?
French or British or whoever never actually colonized Iran. So Iran was
No,
never
no, I'm
colonized.
talking about Arabic in general,
Oh,
because
Arabic.
other
I don't,
languages that do right to left.
yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Maybe because so this is really a wild guess. So I'm just guessing that maybe because they found it more convenient because they are typesetting the main text from right to left. They found it more convenient to actually also write mathematics from right to left, or maybe the tools that they had.
Okay,
It could have mixed both left to right and right to left text. But
okay,
I'm not really expert in Arabic language.
right.
Um, Yeah, and even in Persian, like it's true that I'm actually developing the XePersian package and the BD package, but really most of it is not my opinion. They just the input from the users and the real people that actually typeset mathematics in academia in Iran. So that's what they actually tell me, that things need to be written in this way, and I just implement it that way. So I have no say in what should be the default way of doing things. And as I said at the beginning of my presentation, I didn't really want to claim that anything I'm about to say is universal practice. Obviously, different people have different tastes, and they may do things quite differently. Yeah.
Mhm. Good. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
No worries. My pleasure.
And you have another thank at the Q&A.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
Mm.